first, the U.S. president is speaking with Russia's Vladimir Putin this Tuesday. The White House is hopeful Moscow will agree to a ceasefire proposal which Kyiv signed on to just last week. Russian President Vladimir Putin has been dragging his feet on his response and at the end of last week suggested he was in favor of a deal but still had some questions. Now, Ukraine's president says he's aware of the game Vladimir Putin is playing and he's calling for pressure to be ramped up on Moscow.
For a
week now, Putin has been unable to squeeze out a yes to the ceasefire proposal. He's saying whatever he wants, but not what the whole world wants to hear. The unconditional ceasefire proposal is essentially about saving lives, allowing diplomats to work on ensuring security and a lasting peace, a proposal that Russia is ignoring. Pressure is needed to finally make Moscow accept that their war must be brought to an end.
We can now bring in Melinda Haring, non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today. When Donald Trump announced this call over the weekend, he said, we will be talking about land, we will be talking about power plants, essentially a process of dividing up assets. This call seems to me more than just getting a yes or no from Moscow on if they will accept a ceasefire.
That's right. So this call is not a yes or no. Vladimir Putin does not accept the deal that was agreed on by the Americans and the Ukrainians, and he's trying to rewrite it. And he's appealing to Donald Trump, and they're trying to divvy up the pieces today. And they have a 2-hour-long meeting this afternoon, and we're waiting to see what comes out of that. But the early statement yesterday that's very worrisome is that President Trump may recognize Crimea. This is the peninsula that Russia illegally annexed in 2014, and that would have catastrophic consequences for U.S. foreign policy and for power around the world.
Now, Ukraine has already accepted the terms of a ceasefire deal. Will it automatically have to accept whatever comes out of this phone conversation?
No, absolutely not. Ukraine has already said that it will not accept that Russia would take control of the 20% of the territory that is illegally annexed. So the territory is going to be one of the major issues of dispute. Russia wants 4 different provinces that it illegally annexed in 2022, and Ukraine has said, no way, that is a red line. So I expect that to be one of the most serious areas of disagreement. The other areas of disagreement are the future orientation of Ukraine. Russia has said no way to NATO, and Ukraine has said this is none of your business. So watch that space as well. And then finally, the big area of dispute will be over foreign troops. Are foreign troops allowed in Ukraine? Donald Trump may agree with Putin and say, it's fine, no foreign troops. But Europe is saying, no way, we're going to put foreign troops in Ukraine as a deterrent. So that's another area of disagreement that should come out today as well.
Because it seems that following on from Vladimir Zelensky's meeting in the White House, that the United States and Europe are working on 2 very separate wavelengths. This despite efforts from people like Keir Starmer to keep the United States abreast of what is going on. Is that the thinking, that the Americans are doing their own thing?
Right. The Americans are doing their own thing, and Europe feels like it's alone and that it has to represent its own interests now. So we've seen a lot of shuttle diplomacy from Europe. We've seen the French president. We've seen the Brits try to appeal to Trump and remind them of the importance of European security. It didn't really work. So we see the Europeans now setting up defense funds and basically getting ready for war is what we see. And we see Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump trying to cut a deal over the heads of the Ukrainians. And this looks like Yalta all over again.
Russia said in the past that the war in Ukraine was a proxy with NATO. Members of Donald Trump's own administration have said NATO enlargement is what resulted in Russia's invasion. Given that this is the line of thinking in Washington now, in Moscow, what security guarantees will please both sides?
So the security guarantees issue is going to be a very difficult one. The Ukrainians want NATO membership, and NATO is not going to give it membership to the Ukrainians at this point. Both the Americans and the Germans are opposed to Ukraine entering NATO. So there has to be some kind of alternative security guarantee. And Emmanuel Macron, the French president, has come up with some kind of guarantee that they would put foreign troops on the ground. And we're still seeing that being sketched out. The Ukrainians are open to that possibility, but of course the Russians are against it. And we don't know yet how the Americans are going to come out. So that's another point that I'd be watching from the phone call today.
Melinda, Vladimir Putin has a larger goal, doesn't he? Besides, this ceasefire deal, which he wants to hash out quickly with Donald Trump, it may seem, I don't know. He says he wants to reestablish ties with the United States. This is something that Donald Trump has spoken about too, the eventual lifting of sanctions. Can we get to that point without a ceasefire deal in Ukraine, you think?
I don't think so. So the sanctions are in place as a result of Crimea, and those sanctions have been on Russia since 2014. So they need some kind of agreement to basically relax those sanctions. They're pretty tough sanctions. I mean, yes, the White House could arbitrarily decide to ease sanctions, but Russia has not changed its behavior. So there's no logical reason to ease those sanctions. But we see today Putin really wants an easing of sanctions, and he wants a return to normal. And he's trying to seduce Donald Trump with business ties, and also saying that we can give you minerals as well. So, the rare earth minerals is another piece that we know that Trump is interested in. The Russians are also trying to play that piece, and they're also trying to talk about future energy deals there as well.
It seems that Europe wants to get a seat at the table, has been trying to get a seat at the table to bring this war to an end. It seems the Trump administration has been avoiding that, given that Europe hasn't done enough on the diplomatic front over the past 3 years. Is that a fair assessment?
No, Europe has done a ton on the diplomatic front. That's not a fair assessment. I think the more fair assessment is that the United States has given the most amount of military equipment, and this is Europe's problem. That is an argument that I think that Europe needs to address. So Trump is saying, you guys, Europe are a bunch of freeloaders. This is your neighborhood. Defend your own territory. And we see Europe stepping up, and Europe has made they've made a lot of pledges. But when you compare the pledges of material versus what they've actually delivered, there is a bigger gap. So I think that is a fair criticism that the war in Ukraine has to do with European security more than it does American security. America does have a vital interest there, but it has a direct vital interest for European security. So I think that the critique there from the Trump administration is partially correct.
And what happens if Donald Trump goes ahead and recognizes Crimea? What sort of precedent does this set?
So it sets a terrible precedent. It tells would-be dictators that they can go ahead and seize territory, and that might makes right. And it is a complete turning over of the international order. So after World War II, we said a might does not make right, and you can't do that anymore. There are rules, and we will enforce them and follow them. So it's turning back, almost 70 years of basically international rules and norms. And it's also telling China, boys and girls, you have a free hand with Taiwan, go for it. There's going to be no consequences.
Melinda Haring, thank you so much for joining us on the program today.
My pleasure. Thank you.